What is going on, gunfighters? Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns and gunfighting the right way with God Almighty at the center, Judeo-Christian values and real-world first-hand experience. Now, I'm blessed to have done much with guns in my life. You've probably heard the Bible before. I've been blessed to do much in the tactical arena as Marine Corps combat veteran, urban warfare instructor, private contractor, law enforcement, competition shooting, but I also really love hunting. I've been blessed to hunt all over this beautiful country. I am in Alaska right now by God's grace, and God willing, I will do some hunting/scouting this afternoon. I've been blessed to hunt all over this beautiful country. I've hunted everything from whitetail on the east coast to mule deer on the west coast and elk and bear and all manner of beast, even exotic animals like fallow deer. I've been a professional big game hunter and guide. Been blessed to hunt buffalo and duck and axis deer and all manner of beast. I don't apologize for that, for slaying beasts and putting meat on the table for myself and my family. That's a good thing. This episode is going to be gear guide for the new hunter. I just did one on Alpha Male Podcast, New Hunter's Guide. Now, I would encourage you, if you don't normally listen to Alpha Male Podcast, but you think you'll like this episode, I would encourage you to go listen to that episode. Because the things that are most important in hunting, I think, have nothing to do with the gear. Things like patience and critical thinking. But I do know that gear is a part of it. So we're going to do the gear guide today on Gunfighter Life. But if you don't normally listen to Alpha Male Podcast, maybe go look for that episode. Should be airing around the time that this one does. New Hunter's Guide. And this is going to be New Hunter's Gear Guide. You need gear. The number one thing you need, you probably know, it will be no surprise if you listen for any length of time, the Bible, the Word of God. That should be your foundation for everything in life. And this podcast is no different, and hunting is no different. Good ethics don't come from legislation. Good ethics come from a good foundation in God's Word. That's important. Important in everything. Important in all manner of aspects of life. Hunting is no different. So, a Bible. Many people have asked. I like New King James. That's kind of my go-to, but I also like NASB. But a good small Bible that you can transport and carry with you in your kit, even if that's just a download app on your phone. Bible app is a good app. I recommend it. There's a bunch of different translations you can download even if you don't have service. Footwear. You're going to need good, appropriate footwear for whatever environment you're hunting. That's important. Footwear is important. Footwear is probably more important than a lot of other things people put high up on the list. But good footwear for your environment, and that's going to differ greatly. You know, if you're hunting the Southwest or the, big woods of Maine, or hunting Idaho or the Oregon coast or Alaska, it's going to differ. So appropriate footwear, and that includes socks. Socks are super important. Now, if you're hunting east of the Mississippi in a stand and you're walking like 30 yards, maybe not as important, but good footwear. Next, appropriate clothing. Appropriate clothing is really important. Good clothing. Not too hot, not too cold. You may decide you want to layer. My favorite way of layering, and I think layering is kind of overblown, is just to have a jacket and unzip it when I'm hot and zip it up when I'm cold. But a big jacket, appropriate clothing, and that includes not ripping on stuff. Like especially if you're hunting in briars and brambles, the southeast United States is really bad for that. There's a lot of briars and things like that there. Your puffy jacket may not fare too well in that kind of condition, in that kind of environment. Appropriate clothing, appropriate material, good appropriate clothing. A good knife. And it can be a folding pocket knife. I prefer fixed blades, but it can be a folding pocket knife. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, but a good knife. And a way to sharpen it if you're hunting out west. If you're hunting east, probably not that big a deal because most of the time you're going to maybe gut the animal and drag it to the nearest road hole, which is fine. But your knife's probably not going to get dull like that. But if you're butchering an entire elk on the side of a mountain, you probably want a way to sharpen your knife because working with a dull knife is borderline negligent. It's certainly more dangerous than a sharp knife in my opinion. So a knife and a way to sharpen it, or one of those exchangeable blade knives. They're really popular today. I used them a lot when I was professionally guiding, either the Havalon or the Outdoor Edge. But a folding knife like that or a good fixed blade knife. If I'm just recommending a knife for a new hunter, it's going to be the Buck 110 Slim. I denote the Slim. It's probably less important for a hunter than EDC, but you might as well get one that's good at both. The Buck 110 Slim. I'm recommending a fixed blade. There are many good fixed blades. The old classic Buck fixed blades are fine. A Mora would do fine. For game processing, it's not my favorite go-to all-around survival knife. If you want a good all-around survival knife, which if you're hunting wild places would not be a bad idea, I've done whole episodes on large fixed blade knives. But a good sharp knife to process your game, you're going to want that. At least one. You may decide you want a small knife and a bigger knife. You may decide you want an entire butchering kit, especially if you're, again, back east, and you're going to be able to drag the animal mostly whole to a place where you can process it. It's real popular because most places back east are not that far from a road. And you can get the animal out whole, you can drag it, and you can hang it up and process it in a shed, in a backyard, where you have access to stuff in your house like saran wrap and butchering paper and all that kind of stuff. So maybe less important to have a knife on you, but you should still have at least one good sharp knife. Oh, and I probably should have mentioned this more towards the beginning, but you need your hunting license, you need your tag, you need whatever the magistrates, have said that you should have to take that game. So if you're required to have that, that's something you should have. Now let's get to the part that ties into more succinctly with gunfighter life. You can hunt with all manner of things. You can hunt archery, you can hunt with a crossbow, you can hunt muzzleloader, which I guess is not per the government a firearm, but most people today are going to hunt with firearms, more modern firearms. The most utilitarian thing that I can suggest to hunt with is a shotgun. I've said this before, I've talked about it for my one go-to long gun for survival, a shotgun. I stand by that. You can hunt the most amount of game with it. So if you're looking to get into hunting, everybody wants to go deer first. I would not encourage that. I would encourage you to go small game first. Go for dove or quail or pheasant or grouse or waterfowl. Things like that. I think it's going to be less frustrating. It's going to be less of a steep learning curve if you start with small game. And the shotgun's great at that. The shotgun is great for small game hunting. And some people just prefer small game hunting. But I think in this country, especially, a lot of people focus on deer, or bear, or moose, or elk, or things like that. But if you're getting started, I think small game is a good way to go. And the shotgun's also great for large game, depending what projectile you use, right? A good Foster slug we'll take anything in North America. So a good Foster slug or buckshot, depending on which one, for medium to large game, or your different shot sizes. And I've gone into whole episodes on that. But a good shotgun, if you want the most bang for your buck, a good single shot shotgun, you can usually find them at big box stores for very, very little money for what you get. So if you want like the most utilitarian, get a good 20 gauge or 12 gauge single shot shotgun. Even if you decide later you want a better gun, it will serve you well. It'll be a good loner gun. It'll be a good gun for when the weather's nasty and you just want a gun that you don't have to worry about if you get some rust on it, some scratches on it. A good backup truck gun or trunk gun for your wife's car. I don't think you'd regret having a good single shot shotgun for what they cost. And again, that'll take anything in North America. I might want something with a more reasonable rate of fire. So if you want to spend a little bit more, I would encourage you to go up to a pump shotgun. I prefer semi-autos. But if you're looking for value, you can get some really good, affordable pump guns for a lot less than really good semi-autos. There are cheap semi-autos. I would not call them good. But you can get a good, cheap pump action shotgun like a Maverick 88 or even a Mossberg 500. They're not crazy expensive. A good pump action shotgun. Again, 12 gauge or 20 gauge really depends. 12 gauge hard to beat because it's economy of scale, usually the most affordable. Usually wherever you're at, the most wide array of ammunition selection. Even like a Walmart will generally have quite a wide variety of ammo selection for 12 gauge. If you want to more specifically hunt medium to large game, kind of the go-to standard is a bolt action rifle. And you can hunt them with all kinds of stuff. You can hunt them with lever actions, which are great. You can hunt them with a semi-auto hunting rifle or even a pump action hunting rifle. But most common is a bolt action. There are many good, if you're looking to get into it, there are many really, really good bolt action hunting rifles. But if you're looking for a good starting bolt action hunting rifle, I would say first choose caliber. The one that makes the most sense for most places is going to be 308. Anything shy of like Alaska or the Yellowstone area, 308 is going to be fine. It's going to kill anything you want to kill. Again, economy of scale if you have wise bullet selection. And I've done whole episodes on that. But 308 probably makes the most sense. If you want to go with something else, that's fine. If you want to go with 6.5 Creedmoor, you want to go with 30-06, 300 Win Mag. If you're just going for deer and smaller, 243 is a phenomenal choice. It's a great choice, especially, again, if you want a good crossover round for deer and smaller stuff like coyotes, wolves, things like that. 243 is a phenomenal choice. But if you're looking to hunt rifle season, a good modern Spitzer pointed bottleneck rifle cartridge, any of the ones I talked about, and if I didn't mention yours like 270 or many of the other ones, doesn't mean it's not good. But for most things, a good bolt action 308, a Savage Axis, the Ruger American, they're good entry level. You get a lot for the money on those. So a good rifle, and again, even if you decide later you want a really, really good high-end, like complete custom build, or a semi-custom like a Cooper Arms or many of the other rifles like that, I don't think you'd regret having a good, affordable 308 bolt-action rifle. Kind of my go-to that I like for hunting that are kind of in the middle of both those are the Kimber rifles. They're kind of a copy of the Winchester, the pre-64 Winchester called the Rifleman's Rifle. They're kind of a modern iteration of that. I really like those, and the Kimber Hunter is not that expensive. So they're good choices. A good choice. Don't be so focused on the gun that you forget to focus on the ammo. The ammo and bullet construction, caliber is probably more important than what model of rifle you get, and bullet construction is certainly really important, right? You don't want to be hunting, big game with a bullet not designed to hunt big game. You want a good, and it doesn't have to be ultra expensive either, but a good cup and core bullet designed to hunt game. One of the standbys is still as good as the Remington Core Lock. Another good one is the Federal Power Shock, and you can just go up the scale from there. But you're probably better off, honestly, with a more budget rifle with really good premium quality hunting ammunition that your rifle likes, and you have to test that out, right? Your gun's going to have a personality, what it likes and what it doesn't like. But you're probably better off with a cheaper model rifle and really good, high quality hunting ammunition than a really, really high quality rifle make and model with just the dirt cheapest ammo you can get. For instance, I would probably take something like a Ruger American with a, terminal ascent load, which is a really good premium hunting load, over a really good high quality like semi-custom Cooper Arms, which is a finer rifle. But if you told me I had to use ELDs in it, which is like a target match bullet, that's not what I want for hunting. So don't overlook the bullet selection. That's super important. And most rifles today don't come with iron sights. You're probably looking at mounting an optic. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Unless you really know what you're doing, mounting an optic like lapping scope rings, and you have a torque wrench and stuff like that, a way to truly level the reticle and the rifle, pay somebody to do it. Take it somewhere and have somebody do it that knows what they're doing. Good mounts are as or more important than the scope. You could have a really, really good scope and garbage mounts that aren't tightened down correctly and give you all kinds of problems. So don't overlook that. Good quality glass, and there's many good companies. Don't go super cheap, right? Don't go the Chinese-made route, but get good quality glass. If you're looking, again, great value. I don't have any sponsors here, but Leupold is hard to beat. Even their more affordable lines, like the Freedom line and things like that, they're really, really good scopes. So you can go there. Or you can also go many of those, let's say, entry-level rifles like the Ruger American or the Savage Axis. They'll have options that come with a scope. You may decide you just want to go that route because it comes with a scope already mounted. It's not going to be the best rifle, it's not going to be the best scope, but if you're not successful hunting, most of the time it's because you did something wrong or just it didn't play out. Not because you didn't have enough magnification on your scope or if you'd only had a 300 Win Mag, you would have gotten that animal. In general, that's not really the most important thing. So, good rifle, good glass, good caliber, good bullet selection, good mounts. All that stuff is really important. I mentioned the Ruger American. They're good guns for the money. Mentioned the Savage Axis. I think those are phenomenal for the money. There's also the Browning AB3, which is kind of forgotten about, but a good entry-level rifle. Winchester has a more budget push-feed option. Not their 70s are fine rifles, but they're a little bit higher than entry-level. Those are ones that I know of that don't have a lot of issues. Oh, also the Mossberg Patriot. They're good entry-level rifles. Nothing wrong with those. They've been out for years. And I think they even make the ones with the wood stock. So if you want that more classic look and an entry-level gun, you may look there. And not to say that those are the only ones. Oh, Tikka. How could I forget those? Tikka, I would consider those an entry-level kind of budget rifle. They're very, very accurate. They don't have the best ergonomics or the best stocks or things like that, but they're crazy accurate. So if accuracy is like what you're looking for, and they make them in all kinds of calibers. They're very popular. They're not American-made, but they're not Chinese either. Tikka, I believe, is from Finland. Good quality Tikka rifles. And a lot of them come in stainless steel, which I'm a big fan of. I would consider them a budget entry-level rifle. And again, if you decided you want something better later, I don't think you'd regret having like a Tikka in 308 or a Tikka in 270 or a Tikka in 30-06. I just don't think you'd ever regret having one of those. I should run through a brief, and this is really brief and kind of just flying over, just getting into. I'll nerd out on entire episodes on just defensive 9mm loads. But overarching, and you got to check legalities because some things that are perfectly, will certainly kill an animal may not be legal in your area. If you're talking shotguns, you're talking a smoothbore shotgun, generally talking your cheapest birdshot, 7.5 or 8 shot. And that's okay for doves and quail. If you're getting a little bit bigger, you probably want to move up to a little bit bigger shot. Like number 6 shot is going to be good for rabbits and squirrels and pheasants and things like that. Grouse, your bigger birds. Turkey's kind of a specialty thing, but you may even move into, for bigger birds, bigger shot. Just know for a lot of waterfowl, you're required to shoot steel shot, which plays by its own rules. I would not advise, just like I wouldn't advise starting out with deer hunting, I wouldn't advise starting out with waterfowl hunting, not because it's not a lot of fun, but because there's so many regulations on waterfowl hunting. It's kind of like you have to have a degree in waterfowl regulations to hunt waterfowl and not break the law. Not that it can't be a lot of fun, it certainly can, but I wouldn't advise starting out with that. There's just a lot of rules and regulations on waterfowl hunting, but that requires usually steel shot or some kind of non-toxic shot. And then you get into your medium-sized game, you're generally looking at buckshot, number 4 buck, number 1 buck, double-aught buck, triple-aught buck. I'm a big fan of number 4 buck. It's one of my favorite loads for hunting and defense. And slugs, and this often confuses people, but it shouldn't be that confusing. A rifled slug is designed to be shot out of a regular barreled shotgun. Normal shotgun barrels do not have rifling. A rifled slug is for a non-rifled barrel. You can shoot them through a rifled choke or something like that, that's fine, but they're generally designed for a regular shotgun barrel, a Foster slug, a rifled Foster slug, or a Bernecki slug. Sabot slugs, which are subcaliber and they're surrounded by something to make them smaller than the actual caliber of the shotgun, or the gauge of the shotgun to be most correct. They have a sabot around them, which is like a sleeve. That's what the sabot is. They are designed to be fired to a rifled shotgun, which is kind of a specialty thing, mostly just for shooting sabot slugs. So get that straight. If you have just a regular smoothbore shotgun, the most versatile option, you probably don't want to be shooting sabot slugs through them. Those are designed for rifled barrels. Getting into the rifle world, if you're talking about just deer, if you're hunting in deer, either whitetail or mule deer is the biggest thing that you're planning on hunting, 243 is a phenomenal choice. 243 is also good crossover for varmints, for coyotes, for things like that. So if you want to get into hunting and you want to start hunting, let's say, coyote, and you also wanted to later hunt deer, 243 is a phenomenal deer caliber. It's one of my favorite calibers. I really like 243. I've taken many deer all over with 243. And then moving up from there, there's 25-06, which is not super popular, but a great deer size round. And then any of your 30 cal rounds, 308, 30-06, are going to be good for any deer and good crossovers for elk and larger animals. You know, you can use a 300 Magnum on elk, but you certainly don't need to. In fact, I think I've taken every elk I've ever taken with a 243. I wouldn't advise that as a go-to caliber. You really got to have discipline and pick your shots and be judicious and about your distance and your range and the angles you're willing to shoot. But don't think that you need a giant Magnum for deer. You're talking about the classic 30 caliber for deer. You're probably looking at, again, bullet construction is super important, but somewhere in the 150 to 175 grain range for projectiles. 180 grain for a 30-06 is kind of classic and good for bigger game as well. Whether it's a shotgun or a rifle, you're going to want a good sling. That's really important. But a good optic, a good sling, don't overthink it. Don't throw a bunch of extra superfluous stuff on your gun. If you're talking about optics, the most common, ubiquitous, and easy to find and economy of scale probably at your local box store, 3-9 is kind of your classic. I actually prefer usually to hunt even out west with an LPVO. I'm kind of an oddball in that. I like to spot and stalk hunt. I like to get close. I like LPVOs. But again, 3-9 is kind of your most classic. And here's a pro tip. Always keep it on the lowest power. And then if you need a higher power, you'll probably have time to crank it up. But if you have it cranked to the highest power, then you may not have time to crank it to a lower power to find your game. As speaking from somebody who's been a professional guide, just keep your optic set on the lowest power. That should be its default, unless you have a very specific reason, like you just saw an elk in this area 500 yards away and you assume he's going to be right back out from behind that tree. Keep your optic set at the lowest power. I would really advise going against anything higher than your classic 3-9, unless you really have a specific purpose and you really know what you're doing. But this is for the new hunter. I would really advise going against anything. You don't need anything higher than 9 power for pretty much anything unless you're doing very specific kind of hunting. And that kind of hunting is really in vogue right now, but that's not what I'm talking about. For the beginner, a lot of your options that come on a rifle are going to be 3-9, and I think that's a great option. Keep it set on 3 power, and you should be good. I've done episodes on zeroing and stuff like that, so I don't want to drag this out too long. Just a beginner's gear guide. A Bible, a good knife, a good weapon setup, whether that's a shotgun with appropriate shot and a sling, or a rifle of appropriate caliber, bullet selection, and optic. Good clothing, good footwear. Don't overthink the gear too much. We've, I think, been led to believe by marketing and hype that you got to have this new hot caliber released this year or the deer are just going to laugh at you. And if you don't have the new Gucci flage pattern of this year, then the deer are all going to recognize you because they saw people in that pattern last year. It's not how that works, right? Camouflage, not super important. Your caliber, much less important than marketing would have you believe. More important that you are patient and you practice with your gun and you have good shooting skills, good shooting abilities, you've mastered the fundamentals, you have good critical thinking skills, all that vastly more important, I think, than the brand name stamped on the side of the rifle or the caliber stamped on the side of the rifle. I'm not telling you to go out and hunt elk with a 223 or a 5.56, but what I'm telling you is as long as you're not off the rails, then caliber and stuff is less important than many other things. Even your gun brand and the power of your scope is less important than many other things in hunting. Don't be led astray by all the marketing hype. Anyway, with that, the tactical tip of the day. If you're hunting anywhere without infrastructure, like if you're just starting out at your house and you're walking out in the backyard and hunting, then really you can just have your full cleaning kit in the house, and if you drop your gun and it gets filthy or gets stuff in the barrel, not a big deal. But if you're out away from any kind of infrastructure, a good way to clean your gun, just a good pull-through bore snake, it's some good all-around cleaner. You might want to have that with you. But a good pull-through cleaning system, your gun gets wet, falls overboard, gets packed full of mud, just a good easy way to clean it. And that could be as simple as, again, a bore snake, some CLP, and a toothbrush. But those good pull-through gun cleaners come in really handy. That's the tactical tip of the day. You can even make your own with just some micro cord or some old copper wire that's strong enough that's not going to break inside your bore, that you've looped around and put a clean piece of old t-shirt patch in that's pre-lubed, and a wet one and a dry one, right? You can make your own. Doesn't have to be super complicated. That's not what I would advise to only have for cleaning your gun all the time, but you can certainly make your own. That micro cord I've suggested before of the appropriate length. You can put a sub caliber much smaller than the caliber of the gun, split shot, just a lead weight on one side, and run it through. Just make a simple bowline knot on the other side and pull through a patch. Again, sub caliber, so you don't get it stuck in the barrel. But as long as you know what you're doing, you can make your own and just have that in your pocket. Weighs very little. And if you drop your gun again and get mud in the muzzle of it or whatever, really handy and nice to have. Tactical verse of the day. But whoever listens to me will dwell safely and will be secure without fear of evil. Whatever you're doing, I started with the Bible. Whatever you're doing, if God is on your side, if God is with you, don't be afraid. Right? We're called to fear only one thing. We're called to fear God and God alone. Whatever else you're doing in life, you should do without fear, for we have not received a spirit of bondage again to fear, the Bible says, but of adoption. Live a life without fear, whether it's in the woods hunting or in the city. Live a life free from fear. That life can only be found in Christ. With that, thanks for listening and have a blessed day.